every programming language has its native data type. In the same way, Solidity has its data type. So there are generally two types of data types in Solidity. One is value data type. In that you will have boolean, integer, fixed point number, address, byte and string, enum. Okay, so these are the value data type. And the other data type we have, it's called reference data type. And in that we have array, struct and mapping. Okay, so we're going to cover each of these in detail, that how you can create array, how you can create boolean. So the first data type we have is boolean. Okay, this is how you write bool, and we are making public so we can able to see the data value. Okay, so we'll type hey. Initially I'm not going to change the data type because the default value of this boolean is false always. Okay, and the second one I'm going to take is boolean and I will make it public, but here I'm going to change this data type to true. Okay, so this is boolean, but this time it's true, not false. So this is the way you can define boolean in your smart contract. Okay, let's come down. Now we're going to talk about the other data type, which is uint. And uint stand for, let's say, unsigned integer, meaning no negative integer, only positive. Okay, to write the unt variable, this is how we can do it. We'll take this unt 8. Okay, so we have couple of range. We have unt 8 is the lowest one, then we have unt 16, unt 24, and will go all the way to unt 256. Okay, so let me show you what I mean by that. So the unt 8 will range from, let's say 0 to, and 2 multiplied by 8 and minus 1. So okay, so whatever value you will get, that's the range of this unt 8. Okay, so hope this makes sense. So this is the range of unt5 and the range is 255. Okay, so if you do the calculation you will find that it's 255 is the range of unt8. Okay, and this one becomes 16 and I will make it 16. If you come here and if I paste here, so this is the range I got it. Simply copy and I'm going to paste it back here. So this is the range of the unt16. Okay, which is very important because we're going to use the same things because we have to define explicitly about the data variables, and that will help us to save gas fee. Okay, so this is the thing which you have to keep in mind, because sometime what happen that the problem will come in terms of underflow, overflow. Okay, so we have to deal with that as well. So this is the let's say UNT 256 is the highest one, okay, and the range lies between, let's say, we'll take this one, 256 minus 1, and same thing, we have to copy this and let's find out the value. So paste and simply copy this one. It's a huge number, okay. So this is the range of UNT 256. So hope this thing's making sense to all of you, okay. And the reason why we take different ranges because it will allow us to save gas fuel when we deploy the smart contract. So that's the only thing you have to keep in mind. But it always better that you should go with this UNT 256. So this is how we can define UNT 256. And now let me show you that what data we have exactly in this. So let's make it public UNT 8, and I'm going to assign this the value to 8, and this will become, let's say, 244, and let's make it to 8. Okay. And by default it will also take, by default it will take 256. Okay, so whether you define UNT 256 or not, if you write only UNT, it will take 256. So that's the you have to keep in mind. It will always take this 256. So let's simply comment out this portion and let's try to find out the data. Okay, simply come here and deploy the contract. Let's deploy it. Here we have the contract. And here you can see we have hey is false because that's by default the boolean value is false. Okay, false. If we click on no, we have this true because we have assigned hard-coded value. And if we click on u, we have this data. You can see 1 2 3, we have this UNT, and this is the value we have. And if we click on this, and this is one we have it. So hope this thing's making sense to all of you, that how you can define the boolean, how you can take this UNT. And UNT only stand for positive number, no negative, and that's the important point you have to keep in mind. Okay, now let's come here, and the second data type we're going to take is, it's also a number but in case of negative. Okay, so because sometimes we need a negative number in our smart contract to do certain calculation. Okay, so for that we have int number. So we have, let's say, negative number are allowed from int type. Okay, so this is the type we're going to use if we want to add a negative number. Okay, and let's talk about the range, that what are the range we have in this as well. So again, it will have the same range. You can define 256 and the range lies between -2 and it will go to 255, and you have to do this -1. Okay, so this is the range you will have from the negative to the plus. Okay, so if you want to do the calculations, simply remove this one and copy and come back here and paste here. So this is the positive, and the same way this is the negative. All you have to do is to add the minus negative sign. So you can go in the negative till here and you can go positive till here. Okay, in this 256. So that's the important point you have to keep in mind, because this is the question, 1 marks question you will get in your exam. Okay, so that's what we have here. That's the range. Now that's the one type. Let's replicate this, and if we make it to 128, so same thing we have to do here. We have to make the changes to 128, and the range will automatically lie in between that range. Okay, so this is how you can define multiple range, whether in negative and positive. And now let's take this real application. So we'll take an example. We'll say -1, and we'll say this value, and again we'll take another one. Okay, so this is the 3 int variable level we have taken, minus and plus. Okay, and we have to make it this I. Okay, I, otherwise it will throw an error. So this looks pretty fine. Now let's come here, deploy the contract one more time, and if you can see here we have a lot of things. So if I click on this UA8, so this is what I have here. We have I. You can see I can easily able to go back in negative because of this int. But if I do the same thing with the UNT, I'll get an error. Okay, if I click on this, I can go into a negative. If I click on this, I go into positive as well. Okay, so that's how we can use negative and positive number with the help of int and UNT. So that's how we can define. Let's come here. Now let's talk about min and max value in number. Okay, so there is a simple way which you can use to find out the minimum and maximum value of a number. Okay, so that's, we have operator for that. So let's come here. We're going to take this variable int public min int, and here we have to define the type. So the type we're going to take int, and we'll call this min. Okay, so this will give the minimum number of a integer, and this will give us the maximum number. All you have to do max, and here we have to change max. Okay, and sometimes this becomes very helpful because if we want to do certain calculations and we want to prevent the condition of overflow and an underflow, in such scenario we can explicitly define that we don't want a number which can exceed this limit. Okay, so in such scenario you can take this one. Okay, so this is the why we have simply deploy the contract one more time, and let's have a look. If we come here, you can see here we have the four functions. Hey, let's call this max, and you can see this is the max number you can take in this 256. Okay, if you define only in, that will take this 256 range. Okay, so this is the range. If you do this minimum, you will have the minus signs, but the rest is same. Okay, so this is how you will get the maximum and minimum number in Solidity smart contract with the help of this function. Okay, so hope this makes sense. Comment out this out to all of you guys. And now let's talk about a couple of more examples. So the second data type we have is the array. Okay, and just like other programming language like C, Python and JavaScript, we have array. We also have array in Solidity smart contract. So let me give this command. In Solidity, the data types bytes represent and sequence of bytes, and generally there are two types. Okay, so there is no difference between a byte and a string. Okay, byte is more gas efficient. So when you will use byte instead of string, it will save you gas at the time of deployment. Okay, so you can take a array as a byte, or you can take a array as a string or as a number. Okay, it's totally up to you. Okay, so now let's come here we have this fixed size bytes array. Okay, and the other one we have is dynamic size byte array. Okay, so these are the two types of array we have. One is the fixed size, which you will define explicitly that you want only 5 arrays in that particular array. Okay, or it could be a dynamic based on the function. Okay, so these are the two types of data type array we have. So that's the array. Now let me do this command. So when you define byte, okay, in smart contract, it's represent dynamic bytes. Okay, so that's the only thing you have to keep in mind. That, but if you want to explicitly define that you want only fixed size array, then you have to set the number. Okay, we're going to cover everything about this array as well in the later video. Okay, so I'll take byte 1, and by default I will don't add anything, and this will become byte b. Okay, simply deploy the contract, and let's try to have a look. Here you have these two functions. Okay, so let's simply comment this one, and I make it public so I can able to access the data. So let's make it public. I'll say public, and this will become also public, and let's try to have a look what we have inside this. Let's deploy the contract, and here we have that calling this function, and you can see this is how the byte data will represent. Okay, it will start with 0x, and then it will have the data. Okay, if you call this, it will have this data. So this is the default value. Now what if But if I want to add value into my byte data, you can do it very easily. Okay, so simply comment this out, and I'm going to replicate it, and I'm going to assign predefined value. So I'll take this, okay, because this is the data. This is how I have to add the data. Start with 0x, which represent the byte, okay, and then you can add the data whatever you want. Okay, so let's define this as well, and simply comment this portion, and now let's simply deploy the contract and make the call. If you call it, you can see here we got the data, okay, and this one is more memory efficient. Okay, so instead of string, we're going to use this byte a lot in our future smart contract. Okay, you all know that computer can understand only binary code. Okay, so this is how this code will represent. Okay, so we'll start with 1010, and this is so on and on. Okay, and if you want to know about this binary code, you can simply do Google, and you can easily able to find and learn more about it. Okay, so this is how it will represent in the Ethereum virtual machine. Okay, so that's the byte code we have, looking fine. And now let's have a look to the other data type we have. So the other we have is address. Okay, so we'll come here and we'll take this address public, hey, and we'll take this address public, and we'll assign the address. Okay, so I'll come here and I'll go back to this. Here I have the address, so I can simply copy, and I want to show you the difference that when you have an address and when you don't have the address. So I will go to simply pass it without code. Okay, so it's a Solidity programming language, in that you don't need to pass this address into a string. You just pass it like this. Okay, so that's the addresses we have. Now what we can do is simply deploy the contract, deploy on, and here we have the transaction. If I click on this adder, you will see that this is the address which we have defined here in the contract, but by default we don't have anything here. Okay, so this is how the address will represent when there is no address. Okay, so this is how it will look. Hope things are making sense to all of you guys, understanding that what we are doing exactly. I'm just going a little faster because these are the basic things, and we're going to get into more detail when we have a dedicated session on each of these data type and when we use in the function. Okay, so simply comment this out and what I can do. And now let's check the default value of each of this data type, because in Solidity there is no concept of null and undefined. Okay, so what are the predefined data we'll get when we'll use any one of these data types? So let's have a look on that. So I'll say default value, I'll first take the boolean, and the default value is going to be false. Okay, let's say false. We'll take another unt, and its default value is going to be, let's say, 0. Okay, this will default value 0, and we'll take the int, it will also become 0, because this is the default value we have for the number. There is no concept of null and undefined. Okay, if you don't provide anything, you will have 0. And let's take the address. So this is what we'll get, 0000 with this. Okay, that these are the default value we have for each of these data type. Same goes for the array, byte size, same goes for that. Okay, but these are the most common used data types, and that's why I'm covering this one as well. Now let's come here, upload this, and let's look at this. If I click on this false, here we have the false. If we click on this unt 0, we have 0. If we click on hey, here this is the address. By default address we get this 00, and the last one we have this number is a 0. Okay, so hope these things makes sense to all of you guys. Whatever we have covered, you have to keep all this thing in mind, because these are the things going to be asked in your interview session, that what type of arrays we have, what is the difference between bytes, and what is the difference between string, which one will save more gas fee. If you want to take a number into a negative, then what data type you're going to use, what are the range of certain units, int or unt. So these are the important things you have to keep in mind, that what it does and how you can utilize it in your smart contract. Right now we have covered about this data type, and we have talked about the unt and int variable. So you must know that why these ranges are important and what kind of problem it will create in our smart contract if we don't use that particular way. if you want to optimize our smart contract for paying the less gas fee, then how we can utilize it in a more efficient way, this in variable. Okay, so these are the things you have to keep in mind to write a well optimized smart contract. Okay, so that's the only thing I want to cover. Hope you guys have found this video valuable about this data type. Let's move to the next video. So when you will ask in an interview that what is the role of the function in the Solidity smart contract, so this is how you have to answer this question. Okay, a function is basically a group of code that can be reused anywhere in the program, which generally save the excessive use of memory and decrease the runtime of the program. So creating a function reduces the need of writing the same code over and over again. With the help of the function, a program can be divided into a small piece of code for a better understanding. Okay, so this is the explanation you can provide to your interviewer, the person who's taking your interview. Now they might be asking you that what kind of function we have in Solidity smart contract. So there is one function, declarative function, and there is a non-declarative function. So this is the code snippet for the function we have. So we have the function keyword, then we have the name of the function, and inside that we can easily able to pass multiple parameters. It's totally up to you that what you want to do with the function. Then we have the scope, that whether you want to make it public, external, internal. Then we have a return keyword, and if you can add multiple parameters like this here. Okay, and there are a couple of more function we have in Solidity programming, like we have modifying state variable. Okay, we have events, we have creating other contract, we are using self-destruct, sending ether via calls, calling function with mark pure and view. Okay, so these are the couple of function you can create, and there is a lot of things you can do with a function. Okay, so that's the general overview I want to give you about the function in Solidity, and let's try to have a look in practical way. Okay, so here we are back into a remix ID. So let's create a contract. So I'll call it learn function. Okay, right now I'm just giving you basic examples of function, but we're going to have a detailed discussion when we write actual real world smart contract. You will see that how life saving it is. Okay, so here we'll take a variable called unt, and I'll say public, and I will say hey. So initially I don't want to assign any value to this, but I want to do it with the help of function. Okay, so get data with the help of function. Okay, so I want to check the function. So right now I'm using this function to check the data of this unt. Okay, so I'll take get info and public, view, and return. Okay, so the reason why I have used this view keyword, because I want to look at the state variable, and the return, you can pass multiple parameter in the function, and I want to return this unt 256. Okay, and now I want to simply return this data. Okay, hey. So this is the simple function which allow me to see the data of the state variable. Okay, that's the simple function we have, and this function can be more complex. You can have function inside another function which can check certain condition. Okay, we're going to do all that, but just have a look that how you can write a simple function which can do a simple thing. Okay, so let's delete this one. Let's try to deploy the contract, and let's try to have a look. So here we have this hey and get info. Okay, so if I click on this get, so before I do that, click on this get info, I can see 0 we have here. If I call, this simple get info, I'll get this 0. Okay, so this is how we can retrieve the data. Now simply come here and let's replicate this, and let's delete this, and this time I don't want to make it public. Okay, deploy this one, and you can see right now we have this get info. If I click, I can easily able to see the data of this. Okay, so it's looking fine. So hope this making sense. This is how you can retrieve the data of the state variable with the help of function. Now let's write a one more function which allow us to update the data. Okay, so we'll say update data. In that we're going to pass the data which we want to update, public. Okay, so this time we try to change the data, change the state variable. That's why we haven't added this any view or return statement. You can return that statement, but I'm not going to return it, because why should we should do that? Okay, because I just want to focus one thing at a time. Okay, so let's update the data. So that's what we have. We can take hey and we're going to update it. Okay, so this is how we can update the data with the help of function. So let's come here, click on this, and let's assign anything, what we'll get that. View is only used to read the data from the state variable. Okay, so we have to remove this view because we are not reading, we are making change in our state variable. Now save it, and let's try to redeploy the contract. Click on, I'm not explaining right now this because you can use to update the checkable work. So in the last video we learned about this entire to update, to define that how much you can update. Solidity, you have to define the data type explicitly. Okay, you have to say that what data type you want to take. And here I'm going to use it memory. Again, this memory keyword has a detailed discussion. It use state, and now we can click on this, click on deploy, and here we have, if we click on, if you want to see, I'll say no, and it will receive the right the 7 for first cover in this short video, because I don't want to extend this video too long, because this which we have access is, as I got this my number. So currently we don't have any data into this array. Okay, so if we do have any data into this array, we can easily pass the at how life saving it is. Okay, the return this that we're going to pass the data which we want to update public. Okay, so this time we try to change the data, change the state variable. That's why we haven't added this any view or return statement. You can return that statement, but I'm not going to return it, because why should we should do that? Okay, because I just want to focus one thing at a time. Okay, so let's update the data. So that's what we have. We can take hey and we're going to update it. Okay, so this is how we can update the data with the help of function. So let's come here, click on this, and let's try to deploy the contract. Okay, and here I have to check the data. So right now we have 0, and now we have to update the data. So in this we go to pass the value. So let's pass 6. Click on this transaction, hit enter. You can see here we got 6. No matter what value you will add, it will keep adding and updating the data. Okay, so that looks pretty fine. Let's keep updating the data. Okay, so that's how you can use the function to update the data. You can see keep updating, keep updating. So this is the updating we have, and let's write one more function which we'll call get unt a plus b, because we want to do some operations. Okay, so we're going to take a two number and we're going to sum it together, and we're going to add to the state variable, and we can do that as well with the function. Okay, so we'll have this view return unt. Okay, so what I will do, I will take this two number, so new number, and this will come a plus b, and I want to simply return this number, new number. Okay, so what I'm doing, I'm taking this two number from the users and I'm summing up together and I'm returning back. Okay, so that's what I'm doing. Simply comment this, and now let's deploy the contract, hit enter. Open up this. Here you can see, here I have to pass this two number. So the number I want to pass is 5. what I'm doing, simply comment this, and now let's deploy the contract. Hit enter, open up this. Here you can see here I have to pass this to number. So the number I want to pass is five and six. Call this transaction. Here you can see here I got the output to 11 because of the return keyword I have used. So you can perform this kind of mathematical calculations, a lot of things you can do. Okay, it will keep updating. Okay, so this is the one example for simple using function to do some calculation within the function. Okay, so hope this makes sense to all of you, that how things are happening. Now what I want to do is, let's come here, we're going to take this hey, because that's the state variable we have, and I want to update that data as well. So, okay, so we're going to say new number. Okay, and I don't want to return this, I want to return this hey. But as you can see here, I'm getting this error because I have used view keyword, and view keyword is not allowed when you are changing the state variable. Okay, we have a detailed discussion on this view keyword, okay, as well. So what I will do, I will simply come here and I'm going to remove this view, and now the error is gone, and now we can easily able to change the data. Okay, let's hit on deploy, go back to the transactions, and you can see if we pass this to data, let's 47, hit enter, and if I open up the terminal, you can see the logs there. So let's come here and simply come here and make it this public, so we can easily able to see, have a getter function, so we can check the value as well. So let's bring this terminal down and let's redeploy the contract. Okay, delete this one, deploy the contract one more time, and we have to pass this. Here you can see right this moment we have hey is to 0, and if we pass this to number, hit enter, and here you can see we got, right now you can see this is the log we got. So this is the two number we have put, and the output we got is 8. Okay, so this is the output we got, 8. Okay, this is the function we have called. If you click on this hey, you will get the 8 as well. Okay, so this is how you can perform operations in the functions and update the state variables. Okay, so hope this makes sense to all of you, that how you can create function in the smart contract. Again, I'm telling you, we're going to have a detailed discussion on each of these topics. Okay, and now let me show you that how the ABI would look like of this function. Okay, because whenever you will deploy the contract, it will generate the ABI based on the variables, based on the data types function you have defined. Okay, and that ABI is very important because that's the ABI is going to be run on the Ethereum blockchain. Okay, so let's copy that ABI and let's simply paste here, and here you can see we have all this data, we have all this abstraction in terms of ABI of the smart contract. Okay, so we have this input, in that we have this data type, and the name of the name is A. So this is the one we are passing, A. We have the another one which is a UNT type, we have B. You can see we have B, and here we have the called the get function. Okay, so we have the name of the function. You can see here we have the portion we want to return as an output, so we want to return the UNT, so the result. Okay, that's what we want to result, and here you can see we have this, that's UNT. Okay, and here you can see we have this non-payable, because this smart contract is not receiving any kind of fund, so that's why the state is changed to non-payable. Okay, and we have the type function. Okay, and here you can able to find the state variable we have defined here, and we have all this calculation. Okay, so this is how ABI will get generated whenever you deploy a smart contract, and this is what exactly run on the blockchain. Hope this thing's making sense to all of you guys. You guys understand that what we are doing exactly. Okay, so let's close this one and simply remove this one because we don't need that one. So that's, if I copy this bytecode, you will find the same bytecodes. Okay, so this is the bytecode we have, all the data. So this is what we have. You can easily able to decode this, simply remove this one, and that's the only thing I want to cover about the function. Okay, so I hope you guys have understood the basic concept that what are the things you can do with the help of the functions. There's a lot of things you can do. You can build condition, build logic, which can automatically do certain of things for getting the data, for calling certain function, for transferring. You can do a lot of things. Okay, and we're going to do that in a practical way when we build the real world application using smart contract. Okay, so hope you guys have found this video valuable. If you have still any question and doubt, do leave in the comment section. I'll try to help you in that, and if you're new to my channel, hit like and subscribe. That will motivate me a lot. So but that's it, I'm ending this video. Let's move to the next video. In the last video we learned about the functions in Solidity, and we have discussed a couple of important concepts which you have to keep in mind when you write your smart contract. In this video we're going to learn about the state variable in Solidity, that how we can create, what are the way to update the state variable data. Okay, so that's what we're going to do in this video. So here I've opened my remix ID. Make sure to do that. So the very first thing I want to do is I want to create a contract, and I'll call it state variable. Okay, and here I'm going to leave a couple of comments, so you guys have to keep few things in mind about the state variable. Okay, so that's the comments I have given. Now I'm going to define a couple of state variables to show you. So first thing, I'm going to take a string public, and I'll call it my state. I will take another one, this will become my num, and I will take another one. String is going to be, let's say, default text, and I'll say hey the default text, and I will take a number public, and this will say default num, and I will assign initial value is going to be 5, and I have to change this one to num. Okay, unt256. Here I have taken 4 state variable. The first 2 state variable doesn't have their value, but the second they do have. Okay, so let me save it and let me try to compile it, and let me show you what we get. So if I deploy, and if I open this, my deploy contract, here you can see currently I have 0 ether into this contract. Okay, so that's why you can see the balance is 0, and here I have all these function, and the reason I got this function because I have used the public keyword, which I have already explained in the previous video. Okay, so right now you can see I have 5 in this, and that because of this default value I have assigned, I have my default text as well. You can see if I click, I got this default text, but if I click on this, I get 0, and if I click on this, I get empty string. Okay, I don't have anything in that. So So that's how you can define your state variable in your smart contract, and the state variable will always come on top. Okay, so you have given the name of your contract, and below that, whatever you define, that's your state variable. Okay, so right now we have taken two data types. One is number and the second one is a string, but we have other data type as well. So let's take a byte. Okay, and this byte is similar to a string. Okay, so when you use byte in your contract, it will allow you to save gas fee. Okay, it will allow you to save gas fee. So I'll make it public and I will say default byte, and if I pass anything in here, you will see the output I will get. You will see the output. Okay, so the output I will get, let me deploy the contract and let me show you what I want to highlight here. So here you can see, here I have the function. If I call on this, if I call this default byte, you can see this is the number, this is the exactly output I'm getting, because this string is converted into a byte because we have used the data type to byte, and because of this it's more memory efficient. We have to pay less gas fee for this. Okay, so that's the thing you have to keep in mind. So whenever you pass whether hardcore data or whether you take from the user as an input, the data will represent in something like this in a byte. Okay, the data we have here. Okay, so let's simply replicate it and let's try to have a look on the default value. If we don't assign anything, what we'll get as an output. Okay, so let me redeploy the contract and let's try to have a look. Okay, so let's change the name to num and let's try to deploy the contract one more time. And if I come here, if I call this, right now you can see we don't have any data assigned to this default byte. Okay, number. So this is how it will represent. It will start with 0x and then the number of alphabet you will have, it will take that binary code. Okay, so hope this makes sense to all of you guys. So this is how the byte data represent as a state variable. So these are the things you have to keep in mind. So this is the way you can define your state variable. You can keep as many data as you want. You can take array, you can take boolean, you can take unt array. So there are tons of things you can do. Now let's come here, and now what I want to do is I'm going to take another variable array. Okay, so you, as I told you, that you can take an array as well. So this is commented this out. If I come here and try to redeploy the contract, and the output I will get, you can see I'll get nothing. Okay, because I haven't made public, so I have to make it public so I can access this. Let's replicate this and let's make it public, and let's redeploy the contract, and boom, and here you can see that I got this my number. So currently we don't have any data into this array. Okay, so if we do have any data into this array, we can easily pass the index and we can easily able to have the output. Okay, so that's how you can define array. If you call this, nothing will happen, nothing will happen. Okay, so this is how you can define array as well. So this is all the state variable, and this is how you define in your contract. And now I want to update the state variable data. So right now you can see this is the two state variable we have, string and number, but we haven't assigned any value to that, but we're going to do it right now with the help of constructor. Okay, we have a detailed discussion on this constructor keyword. Okay, constructor keyword, sorry. Okay, so just focus for the time being that there are multiple ways you can update the data of your state variable. Okay, so currently it's empty. Here I'm going to take this constructor, and in that I'm going to pass this two data. Okay, so I have to pass the string, I have to pass the number, so I can assign that number to my state variable. And this is how we can do it. Okay, so I'll copy here and I will pass that, because first thing is a string, so I have to give the name of that data type string, and in Solidity you have to define the data type explicitly. Okay, you have to say that what data type you want to take, and here I'm going to use it memory. Again, this memory keyword has a detailed discussion, it has its own topic. Okay, so that's why I'm not covering it, just use it. And then I'm going to call this anything. Okay, and this is a general convention in the smart contract. So whenever you take any data from the user or as an input, this is how you denote slash and whatever name you can give to that. Okay, so I'll call it text, and I would call the number as well num. Okay, So this is our constructor. Whatever data we'll get from the constructor, we're going to assign the data to our state variable. Okay, that's pretty simple. So this is how you can update the data with the help of constructor, and this is what we follow when you will create ERC20 token. So at that point of time, you're going to define your name of the token, and you're going to define that how many token supply you want, and this is how you're going to do it. Okay. So let's try to update that. So let's come here. So this is the data we have. Let's come here and let's try to deploy the contract. And let's, here we have to pass the text, and we have to pass the number. So I'll call it, let's say, hey dollar, and here I want to say 6. Hit on transaction, and if I come here I have my logs. Okay, if I click on my number, you can see I got 6, and if I call my state, I got this hey dollar. So this is the another way which you can use to update your state variable. Okay, so let me comment this out, and now let's talk about the third way which you can use to update your state variable. Okay, with the help of function. Okay, so let's come here, let's create a function. So I'll create a function, I'll call it update, and the same thing I have to do is I have to pass the same data type. Okay, same convention I have to follow here. I will make it public, and again there is a detailed discussion about this public keyword, that why we use, and we have a detailed discussion about this public keyword, what is public, what is external, what is internal. Okay, just follow along with me. So what I will do now, I will simply take the data, my state, and I'm going to update it. Same logic I have to follow here, simply copy and paste here. So our function is ready to update our state variable. Okay, so now let's deploy the contract. So let's come here, and I'm going to select the contract, and I'm going to click on this deploy, and here we have the deployed contract. Right now you can see we have nothing in this two, my num and my state, and here I have to update the data. So I'll call here inside the function, and now I'm going to pass the data which I want to update. So I'll say is and 2. Okay, hit enter. Now you can see the data is updated. So this is the another way you can use to update your state variable. And that's the only thing you have to know about the state variable, that how you can define the state variable in your contract, what are the ways you can use to update the data of your state variable. Okay, we're going to get into more details when we'll build the actual project ahead. I just want to have you a basic graph idea that how state variable work and what are the way you can act with. Okay, so we have done with this entirely. Okay, hope this entire thing makes sense to all of you guys. You have understood that what are this. So with that, I'm ending this video. Let's move to the next video where we're going to talk about the local variables in Solidity. In the last video we learned about the state variable. In this video we're going to talk about the local variables in Solidity smart contract. Okay, so I have opened my remix ID, make sure to do that, and let me give this comment local variables, and let's create a contract by the name local variable. Okay, we are following the general convention. Okay, not a big deal. And here we're going to define couple of variable as a state variable. Okay, so when you define variable here after the contract, it's called state variable, and that's the thing you have to keep in mind. Okay, so it will become public, and I will call it number. Okay, right now I'm not assigning any value to this state variable. Okay, so we have our state variable, and now I'm going to create a function. So I'll call it function for local variable, and now here I'm going to define the function. I'll call it local public. Here you have to keep few things in mind. Whatever variables you will define inside a function, they are called local variables. You can define as many as you want, and you can use them to build different logic to perform different calculations. So those variable can only execute when the function is get called, and they're not going to store on the blockchain. It's used locally in a memory. Okay, so all the variables which you will define as a state variable, those are the variables going to store on the blockchain, and those will keep the actual data. But those variables you will define inside the function, they're going to use in the function and act as a memory. Okay, it will not store on the blockchain, but it will store in the memory. So that's the few thing, that's the thing you have to keep in mind. So I'll say not store on the blockchain. So you guys can understood that the variables we'll define here, it will not store on the blockchain. And here I'm going to define a variable. I'll take a UNT. I'll define a variable UNT I, and I'll say I is equal to 345. Okay, that's the simple one. And here I'm getting some sort of notification. Okay, so let's come here. Let's delete this one. Let's try to deploy the contract. Click on this, and here the contract is got deployed. Here I have my number. If I click on this, currently I have 0 because nothing in there. But if I have this function, I click on this function, and here you can see nothing is happening. I want to return this. Okay, so I have to make this view. I'll simply call it pure because we have a detailed discussion about this view and pure. Okay, so I'm not explaining right now this because I don't want to make things complicated to all of you guys. Okay, so just use pure, and here I'm going to use return. And what I want to return, I want to return number. Okay, so I will take this UNT, and this is how you define return. Okay, and here what I will say, here I will come and I will simply say return, and I'm going to call this I. Okay, so in this way I can easily able to have the output from this function. So let's save it, and let's try to deploy the contract one more time. And if I click on deploy, if I click on this, here you can see I have 0. If I click on local, and I have the output. Okay, so this is how I can easily able to use the local variable to perform certain tasks. Okay, so this is the one way to define your local variables, but I want to do something. Okay, so right now you can see this is the state, this is the local variable I have, and I have my state variable which is an empty. So what if I want to make certain calculation, and the output I get, I want to assign that value to my state variable? Okay, we can do that. Definitely we can do that with the help of our local variables. Okay, so what I can do, I want to update that. So let's come here. Here I'm going to call that my number, and I want to update it to I, and here I want to have the output as my number. So here you can see here I'm making the change in my state variable, okay, because the so what I can do, I want to update that. So let's come here. Here I'm going to call that my number, and I want to update it to I. And here I want to have the output as my number. So here you can see here I'm making the change in my state variable, okay, because the here I'm going to call that. Here I want to have the output as my number. Previously the state variable is 0 empty, but here I'm, with the help of this function, I'm changing the state variable data, okay. So I have to remove this from view, okay. Actually we don't need to use view because we are making change. View is only used to read the data from the state variable, okay. So we have to remove this view because we are not reading, we are making change in our state variable. Now save it, and let's try to redeploy the contract. Click on this deploy, and here we have the contract, okay. So if I click on this local, you can see right now I have this 0, but I have to call this function. If I call this function, if I call this, here you can see this is how we can update the data. So let me repeat what we have done, because this is the very important thing which you have to know, because when you will work on an actual smart contract, this is the thing goes over and over again, okay. So inside the function we have created a variable by the name I, and that variable I, we are assigning that local variable, we are assigning to our state variable. That's the only thing we are doing here, and because of that it's everything's working fine, okay. So that's working fine. So I hope you guys have understood that how you can use this function. And if you come to the logs, if I call this function, and if I come here, you can see this is the entire log I have got for this transaction. So this is the account which I have to do it, and the function I have called, and you can see this is the output I have got from this function, okay. If I call it one more time, open it, this is the output I have got, okay. So this is pretty simple. Hope you guys have understood that how you can define local variables, how you can use it, local variable, to perform certain calculation to update this state variable, okay. So that's our local variable. Let's have a couple of more examples. So I'll say I plus plus, okay. So what I'm doing inside that, I have defined the I value is 345, but further I'm trying to update that as well, okay. So I'm adding 45 to that, and I will take this address and I want to take the address one, okay. So this is what I'm doing. So let's come here, let's define the address data type here, and now I have to make the output, okay. So I'll say address, I want to take the number, and I want this I remove this one, and here I have to define that what are the data I'm just returning. So here I have to come and here I have to define everything. So I will address and I want this number. Okay, so that's the three thing we are returning. So we have to define explicitly that these are the three data type we are returning. Okay, and now we can click on this, click on deploy, and here we have, if we click on my number, still we have 0. If we click on this local, and here you can see we got the output. Okay, so this is the one we have right now. We have seen this is looking good, and here you can see in the log, you can see we got the address account 1, we got the unt 45, and we got the 39. Yeah, 390. Okay, it's coming in the form of object, so we can easily able to fetch this data and display on our application. Okay, so that's how things are looking fine. Okay, let's bring this down. So that's all about the functions and how you can create local variables and perform different tasks. Okay, and how you can use local variables to update the state variable. Okay, with that I'm ending this video. Let's move to the next video. In the last video, we learned about the local variables. In this video, we're going to talk about the global variables. That what are the global variables we have access in our smart contract, so we can utilize it. Okay, so the same thing we have to do. Let me give this comment: local variable. We're going to build a contract. We'll call it local variable, and here I'm going to define all the variables which we have access as a global variable. Okay, so let's start with the first one. I'll say address, public, and honor. Okay, so let's start with the honor first. So here I'm going to build the constructor, and this honor will get updated. So I'll say honor equal to message dot sender. So what I'm doing here, message dot sender is a global variable, and how it's work, whoever will deploy this contract became the message dot sender. So we are saying that whoever is deploying the contract take the account address and assign it to the honor. That's what we are doing. Okay, so let me show you practically. Let's come here and let me remove this one. Simply click on this deploy, and let's call it honor. So this is the account which I have used to deploy the contract. Simply copy and simply paste here. Okay, and let's come up here. Here I have my first account which I'm connected with, and I'm going to paste it here. Okay, you will find both the accounts are same. Okay, so in this way you can easily able to access the message dot sender means the one who deployed the contract. Okay, so this is the one global variable we have. Now let's talk about all the other global variable we have in our smart contract in Solidity. Okay, so we have this block hash, we have difficulty, we have gas limit, number, timestamp, value, now on, and we have this origin, gas price, call data, first for. Okay, so these are the couple of variables I have taken, so I can show you that what are the global variables we have access to. Okay, so these are the variables I have taken. Now let's try to access. Okay, so here we're going to do in the contract. You can use it in the functions, but here I want to get it in the contract. Okay, let's deploy the contract and let's try to have a look. So if we deploy the contract, you can see here we got that, and here you can see we have empty, nothing in there. Okay, all of these fields have empty. Okay, nothing in there, and now we have to simply update all these data in our constructor. Okay, so let's do it very quickly. So here we have the block Coinbase. Okay, we have difficulty, we have gas limit, timestamp, gas price, origin, data, sign, value, and we now. Okay, so all the data is available in this block. So whenever any transaction will happen, it will contain all this metadata. Okay, so we can easily able to access the origin, the data, sign, timestamp, number, gas limit, difficulty, Coinbase. Okay, so now what I can do, let's try to deploy the contract. Okay, you can see we have all this, and you're going to use a lot whenever you want to build any logic about the smart contract. Okay, just imagine that you have to build a contract which can take a token from the user and it will keep it for a week or for 2 week, and then it will send back to the user with some extra reward. Okay, so if you want to build that kind of smart contract, then these are the property you need a lot. Okay, so we have this. Now let's try to deploy the contract. Click on this deploy. Week of the lot when the contract. Okay, Coinbase. Okay, access any value. Okay, so or you can use it in have and show you you that what are the global variables we have access to. Okay, so these are the variables I have taken. Now let's try to access. Okay, so here we're going to do in the contract. You can use it in the functions, but here I want to get it in the contract. Okay, let's deploy the contract and let's try to have a look. So if we deploy the contract, you can see here we got that, and here you can see we have empty, nothing in there. Okay, all of these fields have empty. Okay, nothing in there, and now we have to simply update all these data in our constructor. Okay, so let's do it very quickly. So here we have the block Coinbase. Okay, we have difficulty, we have gas limit. Now num timestamp, gas price, origin, data, sign, value, and win now. Okay, so all the data is available in this block. So whenever any transaction will happen, it will contain all this metadata. Okay, so we can easily able to access the origin, the data, sign, timestamp, number, gas limit, difficulty, coin base. Okay, so now what I can do, let's try to deploy the contract. Okay, you can see we have all this. Let's try to deploy the contract. Okay, you can see we have all this, and you're going to use a lot whenever you want to build any logic about the smart contract. Okay, just imagine that you have to build a contract which can take a token from the user, and it will keep it for a week or for 2 week, and then it will send back to the user with some extra reward. Okay, so if you want to build that kind of smart contract, then these are the property you need a lot. Okay, so we have this. Now let's try to deploy the contract. Click on this deploy, and here we got it. And now if you click on any one of these, you will have access to the data. So this is the call data. Okay, right now we don't have any data, that's why it says this way. Okay, if we click on this difficulty, this is the difficulty, we got it. If we call this first four, okay, it will give you the first four of the buy data. Okay, so that's why you can see in that way. If you click on this gas limit, gas price, block, now zero, number. Okay, so this is number 21 number block. Okay, origin, this is the owner. Both origin and owner has the same address. Okay, timestamp we have, and we have value to 0. Okay, so hope things are making sense to all of you, and you guys know that how many data, how many global variables do we have access in our contract, and how we can utilize it. Okay, so these are the important things you have to keep in mind when you build your smart contract. So hope you guys have found this video valuable. If you have still any question and doubt, do leave in the comment section. And that's the only thing I want to cover about this global variable, that how you can access in your smart contract. With that said, let's move to the next video. In the last video we have